Hello everybody, and welcome to Some Patches Required, a show where we hope to educate and entertain you on the ever-turbulent games industry. As always, I am one of your hosts, Aaron.
And I'm your other host, Zach.
And today we are back at it with kind of a mix of seriousness and a slightly more lighthearted conversation in regards to the situation over at Bethesda following the fairly catastrophic layoff situation at its parent company, Xbox. But beyond that, and before we dive all the way in, as always, thank you very much for listening. If this is your first episode, welcome aboard. I hope you enjoy what you find, and if you've stuck it out with us for a while, we really appreciate you coming back and joining us for another round. If you would not all mind too terribly kind of coming together and sharing the show with a friend, or as we often like to say, a mortal enemy, and of course hitting the engagement button on your platform of choice. Those are both very, very much appreciated. They're very helpful in terms of getting us into the good spot in the algorithm and helping other people find the show. So if you are interested in helping us in that endeavor, any and all likes, shares, and all that fun stuff, very much appreciated.
And, while we're at it, you may as well just let us know, what is your favorite Bethesda game, whether that be a Fallout game, an Elder Scrolls game, or maybe even, God forbid, Starfield.
Or Elder Scrolls Blades, RIP.
That is also a possibility, although I can't tell you that I know a single person, or can't say, rather, that I know a single person that has played that game. So
I have played that game.
Oh, well, I do in fact know a single person that has played that game.
It was bad.
Yeah.
It was conceptually interesting until you played it, and then it was quite bad. But yeah, thrilling.
Thrilling. Well, I also think it's funny, although I think that our GTA video, or episode rather, which is the last one that came out, so if you want to check it out, was relatively well received, even though I expected to get hate mobbed a little. If it wasn't enough for us to potentially get hate mobbed about GTA, now we're going to throw ourselves into the fighting arena talking about Bethesda.
Yeah.
I will say, I do wonder how many people still love Bethesda like they used to, considering the fact that their last critical hit of a game was probably Fallout 4, which came out over 10 years ago at this point. I think it came out in 2015. So
and even back when you and I were in college, Fallout 4 did not exactly have the most sterling reputation amongst. Granted, I was in with a bunch of game developer people, and you were also crossing over in with a bunch of game developer people. So it's not like we didn't all have very strong opinions, but even back then, some of the bloom was off the Bethesda rose.
Yep. No, it is truly the downfall of what I would have once considered probably one of my favorite studios, but I am also a massive Oblivion 2006 fanboy. And I actually like the remake as well. But regardless of that, none of that's really relevant to what we're going to be discussing today. Our story today ultimately starts earlier this month when Xbox officially announced the sweeping cuts that were a part of its, quote, reset. I think the word that was thrown around a lot, Aaron, was bloodbath, if I am not mistaken. Yeah, so a bloodbath that involved the immediate firing of over 1,600 employees, and will eventually include 3,200 employees that were all part of Xbox Game Studios. I also learned recently that this was actually part of a larger Microsoft layoff, but the vast majority, I can't remember the exact numbers, but I think 3/4 of it were Xbox employees that were laid off. There was an additional 1,000 that came from Microsoft.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the figure I read was somewhere in the 41 or 4,200 range, grand total across all of Microsoft, but the overwhelming majority was coming from the Xbox division, which, yay! Here we are again! We're back in layoff town. It's something that we, and every other person who pays attention to this sort of thing, absolutely predicted when Asher Sharma came in and was all smiles and affirmations and Xbox name rebrands and There was a whole lot of very good PR going on that was, clearly trying to soften the blow for what was about to come and make it all seem very purposeful, which, to some degree, I'm sure it is. This is not a decision that's probably made willy and or nilly, but it is pretty ruinous for, obviously individuals' livelihoods, and also, I would argue, and we'll dig into this a little bit later, potentially a lot of the studio's abilities to even like function, right? Because a lot of the people who have been let go are veterans of years, sometimes north of 20 or 30 years in this industry or with Xbox in general. And it's pretty wild to see that level of experience just be kind of let go. In addition to just the volume of employees let go. Now, some of the studios, just to get this out of the way, have managed to secure their own independence. Like Double Fine is now back to being a fully independent studio with full rights to its own IP and catalog. There are other ones like Ninja Theory, I think, just got new ownership, or like it's just being like sold to a different group. And then there's yet others like Arcane that are currently, basically under review due to French labor laws, trying to figure out what can or should be done with the studio. But Bethesda and all of its sort of subsidiaries were not immune to these cuts, despite sort of being the like free pass golden child, I think. Not the publisher as a whole, but like Bethesda as a game making company, having some of the most valuable IPs inside of the entire... I would argue that Bethesda's output right now is of more value than Halo to Xbox, because Halo just as a brand has been so horrifically mismanaged. And I'm sure that Campaign Evolved is doing well, but I would say that arguably right now, like Bethesda's IP are some of the biggest drivers for sales across that entire like division of things. Like Doom: The Dark Ages has done really well. A lot of the stuff that Bethesda has published has done really well. But yeah, they just absolutely laid waste to teams across that entire section.
Yeah, it's interesting that no studios ended up being fully demolished in the process. To clarify, I'm not complaining. Like, I think that that's wonderful that a lot of these studios have either found new ownership or been able to split off and become their own thing. One, because I think it's a small victory against the consolidation in the games industry, which Xbox has largely driven and then decided to leverage like a cudgel to punish people for its own failure.
Yes. So, hey, Zach, that was really good.
Yeah, a little frustrating there. But the interesting thing, as it pertains to the topics that we've got going on today, I'll just mention these numbers because this will become more relevant later, is that as a part of these layoffs, Bethesda wasn't overly impacted across the board, but we did see pretty heavy cuts at ZeniMax Online as well as id. So ZeniMax, according to a WARN notice in Maryland, was laying off roughly 213 people. That's, of course, the team that works on Elder Scrolls Online. I have my own opinions about that game. We'll get into maybe. And id, there was a WARN notice in Texas that stated that 136 people were going to be let go from id, which of course
is about half the team.
Yeah. Yep. Which is of course the team that works on the Doom franchise, of course, which has done pretty well, I'd say, with most of their titles since Doom 2016. So, not particularly great to hear that coming for those teams, but I will say what's been interesting is that following a lot of these layoffs, we have seen a statement come out from both of these teams, at least, basically saying, hey guys, like, don't worry, we've still got the, magic that we've always had, and these reduction in force, they won't matter. We're at the same team size that we were when we worked on, for example, Doom 2016, or on Rothgar and Somerset. I forgot the exact name of the expansions for ESO. But these were very clearly like marketing statements to say, hey guys, we're still alive. We're still doing okay. Those big cuts, yeah, those were unfortunate, but we're stronger than ever.
Yeah. Like, we're smaller but denser. We're leaner and meaner, right? Like it's clearly just marketing spin designed to give people confidence that these studios are not just being gutted to the point of, ruin completely. But I will say that insofar as like fairly obvious marketing spin goes, it's not anywhere close to the most obvious marketing spin that Xbox has decided to do. Which to not to like blast straight through a point, but that would come from the bizarrely fanfare-free memo posted about the future of Bethesda.
Yeah, and you know what? I think the interesting thing about this future memo is a lot of these things were leaked, and we'll get into the specifics here, but I don't want to forget this point. A lot of the information that was leaked, or not leaked, a lot of the information that was stated in this announcement post about the future of Bethesda was stuff we already knew about. So, for example, Elder Scrolls 6 is in production. Cool.
Great.
We knew it was going to happen, but it is good to know that it's at least in production, have a confirmation of that and not that it's still in pre-production, considering the game was announced in like 2018 or whatever.
Yep.
Fallout 5 is in pre-production. Not a massive surprise there, I suppose. We got official announcements that both Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3 were getting remakes. Again, I believe that came up actually in the FTC filing, that got leaked.
Mm-hmm.
Fallout Shelter is getting a TV show. I don't think that was in the leak. I don't really care about that, to be honest. And then I think the only real new thing is that Obsidian is working on a new Fallout game, which Aaron and I have our own thoughts about poor Obsidian, but that I think is the only like truly new information outside of maybe some small details like the fact that Elder Scrolls 6 and Fallout 5 are both going to be made in the Creation Engine 3. Yeah, which is the same one that was used for Starfield, which I think the farthest thing, like, why are you mentioning Starfield at all? Do not reference your new games to Starfield. Starfield is a mess of a game. Is it the worst game ever? Absolutely not. But, like, it is not good.
No, Starfield is everything that's wrong with Bethesda kind of just mashed into one tepid sort of afternoon tea, but it was yesterday afternoon's tea. It's just not a very good game, guys. I'm sorry. Like I did, and I'll wear my bias on my sleeve. Me and Bethesda have had a troubled history. We don't always get along very well. I understand the appeal more often than I don't, and I understand the appeal of the idea of Starfield. But I probably put 15, 20 hours into Starfield on Game Pass back when I had Game Pass, and man, it's just not sticky. It's not very interesting. The story's not very good. The characters aren't very good. The tech feels like it's 15 years out of date. It's not the game that I would be using as the launch pad for my future, and it's certainly not the thing that I would be visibly pulling into focus when you have much more recent examples of games that have landed, namely the remakes, right? The fucking Unreal Engine remake of Oblivion landed pretty well. Anyway, my point being, I agree with you. Not necessarily to say that they should be abandoning Starfield, but definitely to say that mansies, I would not be using that as my launch pad.
Yeah, it's just a game that I do think aesthetically has an interesting like vibe, but just does not execute well on even being a Bethesda game. Like there's far too many loading screens, there's a bunch of other issues, but that's kind of the majority of what they've announced.
Yeah, and I won't get all the way into this because otherwise this will just become the episode. But my argument would be that actually Starfield might be the most Bethesda game. In terms of modern Bethesda, I think that its biggest flaws are that it is such a Bethesda game that it can no longer overcome itself.
Yeah.
And I think that is a problem that has taken a while for Bethesda to mature into. But it will, in my opinion, be a problem moving forward that we'll probably address at some point down the road during this episode. But yeah, sorry. Those would be the announcements.
I don't want to completely skip the point that you were originally mentioning around the marketing beat, because there's a bunch of people that are talking about it, but specifically one of the videos that we watched was from Michael Bell, of course, at Bellular News, who was talking about why did Bethesda just announce ... everything. And in this video, he basically lays out the fact that from his perspective, and I'm inclined to believe the same, this is a massive marketing push to basically be like, Xbox is fine. Here's proof of life. Look at all the cool stuff we're working on. Forget about all the bad stuff that just happened. Yeah, we're totally okay. We've got the same amount of people on our dev team that we did during X game that you liked. Remember that game? So
Yeah.
it's definitely a marketing attempt to some degree. To what degree is that to like obfuscate the fact that they've just done these horrific layoffs? I think maybe even the biggest layoffs in the games industry history. I'd have to double check that. But regardless, certainly one of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
It definitely seems like that's the case for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know that it seems like that the case so much as it is that the case is screaming in our faces, this is me, I'm it. And it has actually, we won't spend all day on this portion of the conversation. We'll kind of move on here in a moment. But I found myself watching a fair number of sort of, people that I tend to trust talking about this stuff, right? And there has been a surprising number of them who have just jumped into this Bethesda conversation more or less excited to talk about any news to do with Bethesda, right? Like, it's exciting that this studio that's made some of the most important experiences of a lot of people's formative years is finally going to be making something new that isn't Starfield for the first time in 10 plus years, right? Like, I've been out of college and lived 2 separate lifetimes in the amount of time it's taken them to get from Fallout 4 to the announcement that Elder Scrolls 6 is even, like, fully in production, and probably still won't be released for another 2 or 3 years, right? So, like, I get the idea that people are excited about this. The Bethesda news, or the Obsidian news, is, technically exciting, and the remake news is probably, like, I'll absolutely play a remake of New Vegas, and probably also Fallout 3, because I think a shiny new coat of paint will help with that. It's all exciting stuff. It leaves a terrible taste in my mouth when people do not address the elephant in the room, which is to say that this is the dangling keys to distract from something else, right? This is 100% them trying to drop a shiny new thing in front of you to distract you from the fact that they have done just one of the biggest waves of layoffs in history, and it's only half done, right? This is, and they're dealing with issues from unions in multiple countries as a result of these layoffs, and there is a reputational issue that could sort of metastasize into an Xbox killer if they don't manage it carefully. And one of the best ways to manage it is to just go, well, what do people like? Bethesda games? Cool. Let's do 2 things at once. Let's show them that Bethesda's fine and that more of their favorites are coming. And let's show them that more of their favorites are coming, and we'll maybe even pander a little bit, right? Like, we'll talk about the Obsidian stuff and just lean as far into Fallout as we can, and we won't even put money into it. Like, it's not going to be a live stream showcase. We're not going to try and put a budget behind this. We're just going to have AI write and Todd Howard edit a little online memo that we'll post. And everyone will lose their minds and do the marketing for us, and suddenly everybody will be talking about that instead of the 1,600 people who don't know, what they're going to be doing for health insurance in 2 months. And I think to not address that is pretty disingenuous and gives a massive corporation exactly what they want for free at the expense of workers. Not that us talking about it really is going to impact anything or have any meaningful, like, change seen as a result, but at the very least we can keep it in the conversation. So while we are going to kind of have a conversation just about the Bethesda side of things, just know that there's a bad taste in both of our mouths whilst we do so.
Well, yeah, especially because whatever year it was when all the acquisitions were happening, we were constantly saying we think consolidation of all this stuff is bad. Even with the consumption of Blizzard, which admittedly wasn't under the best stewardship with Bobby Kotick, we still were very skeptical about what this would do for all of the people getting brought in. And obviously it's mostly, I mean, I don't know that it's been good, but regardless of any of that, I will say the closest thought that I have to what we've been discussing and to the next topic that we're going to jump into, which is, will Bethesda be able to stick the landing? following
Can it
all of
execute
these.
on any of these actual games?
Yeah, and just like deal with the fact that they've been impacted to some degree by these layoffs is that marketing beat where it directly came out online and said, like, look, we're completely fine. We have the same amount of people that we did for Doom 2016. And then the ZeniMax comment, I believe, actually happened at I think it's called like ZeniMax Tavern. It was some event in Germany where they had a similar statement that they said in reference to the Hrothgar and Somerset expansions. But basically, the important point that Michael Bell brings up in his video is that game dev isn't simple math. If you have 50 people and you work on one project and then, your team grows to this massive size and then you downsize again to 50 people, that doesn't necessarily mean that you've still got the same talent and the same knowledge that you did when you made the game originally. When you originally made the game, you had 50 people that learned a lot, suffered a lot, had a lot of growth making the original game. Those same people may not be the same people when you go through the layoffs. And so the evidence based on the Bellular video, at least for Ed, is that a lot of the talented people that worked on Doom 2016 have actually been laid off. He said, based on some interviews from another outlet, it's being reported that 2/3 of the remaining people at id Software that worked on Doom 2016 have been laid off as a portion of these cuts. And being someone that, is in the games industry, companies will fire people that have the knowledge needed to succeed because they don't look at things in that way. They just look at you as a spreadsheet and a number that they want to drop down. So I'm not saying it's not a consideration for a lot of these teams, but I've constantly seen experience get undervalued, at least as it pertains to like, oh, you're the team that worked on this really great game and understand all this from working on that game. Like that doesn't seem to get valued consistently by, executives.
Well, experience is expensive.
Well, experience is expensive, but I just think it's undervalued because like, even if it wasn't expensive, I feel like it's just not taken as a consideration a lot of the time.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I mean, right? Like it's, when you're looking at a line item, you're going to want to cut an expensive line item because what they're actually bringing to the table isn't quantifiable in a deliverable, right? It's something that comes out throughout the process. It's something that comes out in the final result, but not as a number.
Well, and the crazy thing, or not crazy, but what I would mention is, part of the reason that I'm blanking on the name of the Larian Studios has become such a giant in that space of games that they're making is because they have spent years cultivating a team and working on this one specific genre of game to the point where, they know how to make those kinds of games pretty well. And a lot of that just comes from experience. It's not like they're hiring new people that just know how it works, right? Like they're building this internal knowledge. They're building these internal tools. And so if you just cut a bunch of experience and then hire random people, you're not going to get that same output. So I just think that's an important thing to mention before we dig into some of the things that we're maybe a little bit more passionate about, because it's not just like people in, people out, or sorry, people in, great game out, right? 50 people doesn't always mean you'll get a great game, which should be very clear because there's plenty of teams that have 50 people that have made projects that we probably don't even know about.
Oh, guaranteed. 100% guaranteed.
Yep.
It's about the right 50 people working on the right thing at the right time in the right place.
Yep.
And, it's not a guarantee that experience is going to yield you a good game either. But at least with experience, that somebody has been through the pipeline and they have the chops to make something, and they have something that an inexperienced person doesn't, which is time in the trenches. And that sort of thing is difficult to quantify, but can certainly be felt in a project. So yeah, I mean, and that's just going to be an issue across all of the sort of Bethesda and Xbox published game studios that have been impacted by these layoffs. So yeah, I mean, in terms of how that's going to impact non-Bethesda made games, there's still a lot left to be seen. In terms of how it will impact Bethesda made games, I think they've got some other hurdles. It's a factor, but I think there are additional other hurdles.
Yeah. Well, and also the thing I just remembered, I'll make this one brief, but with ZeniMax Online and the substantial cuts that they made, when they were at their team size that, was whatever, 200 employees less than it was prior to the cuts, they were not responsible for Elder Scrolls Online and also supporting the new Elder Scrolls 6. Now they're responsible for both. So they're back at a team size that they had when they came out with two of the most acclaimed expansions for ESO, but now they have more responsibilities. And also, running a live service MMO game is not easy. There's probably a reason that they hired a bunch of people onto that team, and it wasn't all just bloat. So, we'll see how that ends up going.
Yeah, that we shall. But unless you have more stuff to sort of dabble in there, I think it might be worth dipping over into the, let's see how this will go in terms of Bethesda being able to execute on the stuff that Bethesda needs to be able to execute on.
Well, I mean, my biggest thing on that note about them being able to execute on the things that they need to execute on, I mean, one, I think we can just look at Starfield, like we were saying, and that illustrates what the current state of Bethesda kind of looks like. And if that doesn't work for you, let's look at the game that they came out with before that, which was Fallout 76. And I have plenty of actual friends of mine that work on Fallout 76. Fallout 76 has made a bit of a turnaround. It is a much better game than it used to be, but it released in a horrific state. It is one of
it was terrible.
Yeah, I got bored. I legitimately, one of the few games that I was like, I'm not going to play this. Within like probably 4 hours of playing it, I knew it was boring and wasn't really interested in it. And so recently, Bethesda's track record is just kind of stinky, for lack of a better way to put it. And in addition to that, I personally feel, Aaron, that they are over-indexing on Fallout. They are so obsessed with coming out with Fallout content. I mean, in the time between us getting Skyrim and the Oblivion remaster, we've gotten, I can't remember if it would have been 2 seasons of Fallout. I think it was maybe just one season of the Fallout TV show. We got Fallout 4, we got Fallout 76, we got Fallout Shelter, we got, I'm pretty sure there was another thing that I am blanking on. But, I mean, even if you look at the new releases, how many of the new releases are Elder Scrolls? It's 1. And then we got 4 Fallout games that are in some form of production, 2 remakes,
4.
Fallout 5, and an Obsidian game. Like, my God.
Yeah, On one hand, I guess I don't have an issue with them treating Elder Scrolls as like their flagship series and then doing a bunch of different corners of the Fallout world to sort of leverage its pop culture zeitgeist moment that they're going to be 4 years too late to capitalize on effectively. Great business decisions. But I don't disagree. I think that Fallout is at the moment the more marketable of the two, because if for no other reason than like it is catching the zeitgeist in a way that Elder Scrolls isn't. And that's not to say that Skyrim was not like the biggest game ever and that the Oblivion remaster didn't do amazingly well either, but I mean, Skyrim got to the point where it got to in terms of being on every platform ever, forever, always, all the time, kind of by doing what is very hard to do for games that aren't sports games, Call of Duty or Grand Theft Auto, which is breaking out of the gamer sphere into the wider world of media understanding, right? People who have a system but aren't like hardcore gamers, we're still playing Skyrim. How many of them are really tied to the Elder Scrolls as a franchise? I wonder. I'm not to say that the game's not going to come out and make $1 gajillion, because it will. Whether it's good or not, it will make $1 gajillion. But I wonder how strong the Elder Scrolls brand is compared to the Skyrim brand. Whereas, even though Fallout doesn't put up Elder Scrolls numbers usually, it is, at least at the moment, sort of permeating culture in a way that Elder Scrolls might not be. That having been said, do I think people will probably get tired of it? Yeah. I think they definitely run the risk of that. I think they run the risk of releasing two potentially cannibalistic, hopefully complementary remakes. Ideally to capitalize on the success, in quotation marks with a question mark, of season 3 of Fallout, maybe? Or the Fallout Shelter TV show that we're getting for some reason. I don't know. I think that you definitely could oversaturate the market and people would get sick of it. But at least in terms of trying to react to the runaway success of the show, I kind of understand the thought process. But yeah.
Well, I think that I actually need to clarify. I've been a little bit disingenuous with, I guess, my framing before, because technically, if you include all of the expansions in ESO, there has been an Elder Scrolls project in there. I just dislike ESO so strongly. It is a MMO that they slapped an Elder Scrolls paint job on just to sell copies. It's just, I'm not going to get into it because it's not really useful. But more so with the over-indexing, from my opinion, is I think that Elder Scrolls is the stronger brand. For one,
okay,
I think fantasy, I don't have metrics for this specific genre comment, but I think fantasy is a more appealing genre than post-apocalyptic, like 1950s callback, or maybe a little earlier, 1940s, whatever callback. Like, I just think genre-wise, it's more appealing to people. And if you look at, even just looking at Skyrim to its closest Fallout equivalent, which would have been probably Fallout 4 is the more fair option.
Yeah.
It trounces Fallout 3, though, too. It just is sold so much better. Like, I pulled some data on this, and it has sold over 65 million copies. Fallout 4 has only sold 35 million.
35.
Like,
yeah,
we're not talking about two things that are even close to being the same. And I will say, to your earlier point, if you look at like Oblivion and Morrowind, their numbers might look a little bit closer to some of the Fallout games. But I would argue that we don't really know what the trajectory of the Elder Scrolls IP is until the next Elder Scrolls game comes out. That will truly help illustrate how many people convert from Skyrim to whatever we call Elder Scrolls 6. And also, I actually thought this was kind of interesting. I didn't expect to see this, but if you look at Metacritic, generally speaking, the original version of every Elder Scrolls game is reviewed better than the original version of every Fallout game.
That doesn't hugely surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, like, some of the systems they've added to Fallout are kind of weird and clunky. Like, I think VATS, though it does make the game kind of playable, at least for Fallout 3, is kind of a strange system to a degree. It's iconic, but in an ideal world, the game would just have gunplay that's good enough that you don't need a weird system like that. But you know, that's neither here nor there, really.
It's part of first person shooter Fallout's DNA at this point. But yeah, I mean, like, I think that what you've just hit on is one of the sort of like technical compromises that makes Bethesda games, or that make Bethesda games so like uneven in their execution just across the board. Would be that the idea of needing to design an entire like freeze frame system that's ingrained into every element of combat just to get around the fact that you can't like make a functional first person shooter in the late aughts into early 2010s is pretty damning, all things considered. I mean, like, it's a cool system. I don't dislike it, but yeah, I mean, that doesn't surprise me hugely, that, to go back to your review score thing. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess my comment is more like, I find them both appealing, but I think my bigger question is just whether Skyrim players convert and there's a long tail on Elder Scrolls 6 like there was on Skyrim. Like, Skyrim made Bethesda capable of doing what Bethesda does now, right? Like for the longest time. It's just like on Skyrim money. And that's great. And like Elder Scrolls Online money, and like good for them. Yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see if this sort of push into Fallout Town ultimately does the brand any favors in terms of like making it a consistent presence in the gaming world, as opposed to just like a curio that 15-year-olds ask their parents about. That's more of a Skyrim joke than anything, but I don't know. I definitely think that the thing I'm going to talk about now, just because we're on Fallout, is the Obsidian stuff very quickly, which is to say that the news comes out that Obsidian, who made Fallout New Vegas, is now making a new Fallout game. And the consensus is, great, that's fantastic. I think that, and I will use this as kind of a springboard momentarily to get into some of the other Bethesda stuff. I think that the general consensus has been, yes, we trust Obsidian with the Fallout franchise. We like what they do with the world because New Vegas is still widely considered to be the best Fallout game, despite the fact that it was made on the shortest turnaround by a team that wasn't Bethesda. And the idea that they are now coming back to revisit that world should be exciting to anybody who loved Fallout New Vegas. Supposing Bethesda can keep their fingers out of the pie and allow Obsidian to cook and make an Obsidian game, rather than just making a Bethesda game. The thing that I find sort of existentially depressing about that is that even though I don't know that any of Obsidian's games since Fallout New Vegas have really stuck the way that New Vegas did with players, Obsidian has managed to carve out a wonderful little spot for itself in between double and triple A at the publishing house of Bethesda, and they've consistently managed to make interesting games that they were interested in making, right? You've got your Pillars of Eternity, and you've got Grounded, and you've got Outer Worlds, and you've got Avowed, and all of these new interesting IPs that are just, even if they're not as immediately memorable or sticky as New Vegas was, they are at least not the same thing over and over again. And to see that sort of spirit reduced to a Fallout support studio is, no matter how exciting it is that they will probably make the superior Fallout game, still pretty depressing. And in my opinion, kind of indicative of Bethesda's inability to execute on its own visions and its own expectations.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. My biggest criticism for like Avowed and even Outer Worlds is that the scope of them feel a little stunted, because I feel like it's clear they don't have the same kind of money or time or whatever it is to make these grandiose RPGs like Bethesda does. But like from a systems perspective, for the most part, Outer Worlds is a better sci-fi adventure game than Starfield, by and large.
Yeah.
It just is kind of goofy and maybe off-putting because it has this like weird zaniness to it, but ultimately the zaniness of it isn't all that different than Fallout. I think Fallout might just be a little bit grungier and a little darker, so it maybe feels more adult. And then with Avowed, which is in the Pillars of Eternity universe, for those that don't know, I thought it was still a fun game. It just didn't really feel like the scope that I wanted from it when I was hoping for a Oblivion successor kind of a thing. But as far as like the gameplay and stuff, I thought it was still fun. It's a game worth playing, certainly. And I would have to actually look at the numbers, but I don't believe either of them sold like horrifically. But yeah, they definitely didn't hit the like Bethesda mass appeal train that Fallout and Elder Scrolls seem to be able to.
Yeah. But I do just think that the idea that Obsidian is coming back in to basically pick up the slack, because Bethesda has been almost comically unable to capitalize on the success of their own intellectual properties. With the exception of Skyrim being ported to a refrigerator, it's mostly on the Fallout side of things, right? Where this much Fallout to me almost feels reactive, because the fact that they didn't have a remake of Fallout New Vegas ready to go between the end of season 1 of Fallout, where, spoiler alert, they kind of tease New Vegas, and season 2, where they kind of do New Vegas. The fact that that game was not ready to go for that, to sell a bajillion copies in the lead up to and follow up from that series is absolutely mind boggling to me. Not that it's that easy to just like gin up a game, but come on, guys, you could do a little bit better than you did. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think that I have trusted Bethesda to execute effectively on a vision in ever. Because my general opinion is, say what you want about whether Fallout 3 is a good game, or whether Fallout 4 is a good game, or whether Skyrim is a good game. You can map the trajectory of the depth of their RPGs over the course of the last 15, 20 years, and just take notice of how much more and more shallow and streamlined the experiences are getting. This is a well-trodden line of thought in terms of Bethesda games, so I won't belabor the point, but I will say that my personal bias leads me now to every single one of their games has had technology that's 10 or 15 years out of date, which maybe didn't feel like as big of a deal during like the PS3 generation, where everything kind of looked like mud. But I remember watching, and I think I've even told this story on the podcast before, I remember watching the reveal trailer for Fallout 4 and looking at the animation of the dog and just being delighted by how much worse it looked than any of the animation in The Witcher 3 running on a mid-tier gaming PC. It, like, the visual presentation was night and day, the systemic presentation was night and day, and every, fantasy game that's come out between now and then has managed to eat Bethesda's lunch in terms of actually like pushing the envelope further into the kind of experiences that people want from Bethesda. So Bethesda seems committed to making the kind of experiences Todd Howard wants, which seems to be Starfield. But what people actually want are the experiences they were having back during the Oblivion days, or even a little bit before. And the two visions don't seem to be meeting in the middle anywhere. So, yeah, I don't know. People's nostalgia can carry them a long way, but I am not confident that Bethesda has a whole lot of hits brewing in terms of like quality. I think in terms of numbers that they'll put up, it'll be big. But in terms of quality, I'm highly doubtful that Bethesda, as it stands, is going to be able to execute on any of their visions. Doom and gloom.
I mean, I think as my kind of closing thing, you stole my point, which is exactly what you said. They trim the content of every game until it's just this generic slush, which I think is probably part of the reason that Fallout New Vegas is like so interesting, is because it wasn't actually Bethesda that made it, and so it was able to kind of maintain a lot of these interesting systems and narrative and whatever. But like, we'll see what Elder Scrolls 6 looks like. My gut feeling, as someone that's already gone through this, is that people that like Skyrim will not like Elder Scrolls 6 as much, and it's going to not have as much to do with just, that typical, I don't know, there's like sometimes nostalgia for the first thing that you start, which I definitely think it is part of that, but like Oblivion is a better RPG from a mechanics perspective than Skyrim is. Skyrim streamlines a ton of stuff, narratively takes a lot of your agency away comparatively, in my opinion. And it's just not as good of a traditional RPG game. And, maybe I'm old and a boomer at this point, and that's why I have this opinion. But, like, I think the same thing's just going to keep happening. I think Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be more streamlined. I think they're going to remove a bunch of stuff that some people care about. And it's just going to be generic at a certain point.
I mean, if you want a fantasy-themed carnival ride with the veneer of choice, then yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly a problem because like choice and RPG, like it's an RPG, so you need the RPG elements and the creativity and the goofiness. It's just we'll see. I think you did a much better job of succinctly kind of articulating the idea. And to your point, this is not just an issue with Elder Scrolls. You can feel the same thing between Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, in my opinion, which is it becomes more on like rails, and it becomes less of this RPG playground and much more of this like generic kind of narrative experience. which is not what I
But
think Bethesda's great at doing.
no, because I mean, and their presentation is just so stilted. I mean, like the animations are always stiff, and the eyes are always dead, and the hair is always a helmet. It's just rough. Like those kind of games need to have really strong systems driven fun, because with really strong systems driven fun, you can overlook presentational deficiencies. But if you're gonna go into 2028 and release a game that looks like it should have come out in 2016, it's got to be good to play. And Bethesda has never had sterling gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, it's always just like, it's fine. It's definitely passable. Like, I wouldn't say
It's passable,
bad,
but it's jank.
but it
I mean,
gets...
it's passable, but it sells 65 million copies. Let's raise our standards.
Yeah.
Other people are capable of doing this. That's the thing, right? It's like, it's not that we're asking for Bethesda to do crazy stuff. It's like we're asking them to try and do more than clear the bar. You know what I mean? Like Starfield is the very image of acceptable. But acceptable isn't sticky or fun or memorable or moving. And I just see them sliding into acceptable territory over and over again, right? It's going to be janky because their engine is busted, but they refuse to do anything else. Sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent, but yeah, I mean, I think middle of the road isn't quite good enough, and I think that Bethesda has been kind of occupying the middle of the road for a while, and there's only so far that an IP will be able to carry that. Well, I mean, I guess that's not true. Call of Duty is the biggest franchise on the planet, so what do I know?
Yeah, no. Well, I guess in summary for me, I think that probably regardless of the quality of Elder Scrolls 6, it's going to sell incredibly well. I feel less
Without a doubt.
sure about Fallout, mostly because I don't think it has the same mass appeal that Elder Scrolls did. I do think that New Vegas will sell quite well, and Fallout 3's remake will probably also sell well, and the Obsidian one might. But Fallout 5, I'm not so sure. We'll see what happens.
Well, I agree. I tend to agree with that. I also think with that much Fallout, you do run the risk of cannibalizing your own sales, and I think with two competing flagship Fallout games, it'll be very interesting to see whether the Bethesda one that's coming out in God knows when, 2039, or the Obsidian one, which they seem capable of making games on a much tighter turnaround. Even to this day, I could see any of those outselling Fallout 5. I think Fallout 6 is a guaranteed, make its money back success. I am curious about the tail, and I'm curious whether it'll just be one of those things where luckily they managed to get it to a point where an entirely new generation of players can discover and love Elder Scrolls 6 the same way that we would have when we were, 15 and Skyrim came out. That's entirely possible, right? Like maybe they just did that well enough that they were able to skip an entire generation, and our generation's money will spend the same, and our opinion won't matter because now we'll be the old people yelling about Oblivion. Whatever it may be. My closing thought would just be, again, there are a lot of teams that their practices might not always be great, but I generally trust them to put out a good product. Rockstar, Naughty Dog, before Suicide Squad, I would have said like Rocksteady, something like that. Bethesda is not and has never been in my mind the mark of quality. They might be the mark of ambition, but they are the mark of tempered ambition a lot of the time. And in terms of whether or not this slew of projects is going to come out all rosy, as I always end up saying at the end of these episodes, really only time is going to be able to tell us that. My suspicion is, please temper your expectations. Don't get your hopes up too high. I hope that everything goes well, but I don't personally have faith that Bethesda as an entity is going to be able to execute. And I think that even though inevitably everybody will forget that this announcement set was all part of a distraction campaign to try and make you forget that they just laid off 1,600 people, it'll be interesting to see what ultimately comes out of all of it, I suppose. Because it's also possible that, and this will be my actual last thought, it's possible that what they've just done is retread the mistake of announcing Elder Scrolls 6 nearly 10 years ago. As a way of, apologizing for, mostly focusing on live service stuff for a little while. and Starfield, it's possible that this sort of PR distraction campaign will just lead to, wow, do you remember when they announced Fallout 5 a decade ago and it's still not here? That was wild. I think there's still a very real potential for that, but that would be only if Xbox doesn't start really cracking the whip and making them deliver some games instead of just, pontificate about them.
Yeah. And I got to say, on behalf of Peter Molyneux, that I'm a little offended by what you said about, them really trying to overscope their games and overpromise. And I just think Peter wouldn't be very happy with you saying that. I think he's built a really long career on overpromising and under-delivering everything. And I think he'd just be really offended and hurt that you would give that to Todd. That's a fair point. So
they've tried to... Todd is going to the Peter Molyneux school of overpromising and under-delivering, but no one has yet to claim the throne from the master. Peter Molyneux is untouchable in that space. Good God, Peter Molyneux.
What a beautiful man. What a beautiful man.
What a beautiful man.
Well, with all of that said, I think we're probably pretty good to start doing our thank yous. So I will say thank you to Mosscat Market, formerly known as eDougie Art, for all of the support you have given us, mainly in the form of our wonderful logo and general style guide. We appreciate you. Thank you for your support. If you're interested in checking them out, I do believe you can still find them on Instagram as Mosscat Market. Unfortunately, you cannot support them financially, but you can support them socially online.
Indeed.
With nice comments.
And like we covered last week, don't dox them. Also, a massive thank you to Beach Girl, who I treasured the opportunity to thank every week. Beach Girl provided our wonderful intro and outro music, and they also are the creator and curator of a wonderful library of online music that is also, sadly, a little bit more diminutive than it was at the beginning of this endeavor, but you can still find Beach Girl's tunes wherever good digital music can be procured, so... give them a look on SoundCloud, Bandcamp, Spotify, YouTube, all the big streamers, and you should be able to find them and give them a listen. I think you will be glad you did. It's good tunes for your ears.
Sweet. Well, with all that said, thanks for tuning in. If you stuck in with us, stuck in there until the end, and until next time, goodbye.
Indeed.
Goodbye. Consolidation in the games industry, which Xbox has largely driven and then decided to leverage like a cudgel to punish people for its own failure.